Hello, assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to 786 Boulevard. We are parked as usual. You can still find us at the confusing intersection of culture and spirituality. This is a podcast for those who don't know and are listening to us for the first time. This is a podcast where Muslims get together to discuss various types of culture, including film, TV, art, today's case fashion, and how it all links together with our spirituality. Today we shall be having a sit down with Zahraa Berro, who is a Hijabi influencer on Instagram and who runs Zahraa the Label, which is a fashion label focused on modest fashion. We'll be discussing and exploring hijab and modest fashion. We'll be asking Zahraa about her journey. We'll be asking and discussing modest fashion and what it means, what it is, and we'll be speaking about hijabi influencers and the extent that they influence people who follow them. We'll also be discussing male hijab and whether or not males can dictate to women how to dress and whether or not they should be wearing hijab. It should be a great discussion, so do stick around. Before we start, please do not forget to subscribe to us on all platforms. We're on YouTube, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, and we're also on Anchor, so do subscribe, and please do leave us a 5-star review. It really helps out the podcast a lot. Welcome once again to 786 Boulevard. Zahraa, Ali, Hasnain, salam alaikum to you all. Zahraa, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Really a privilege to have you on. And you know, I just think that I before we started, I just kind of like flicked through your Instagram, and I thought just discussing this topic is something that's so prevalent because, you know, these days modest fashion is all the craze, you know, especially for so many Muslim girls growing up in the West. You know, they want to utilize style and fashion to fit in, but to do so in a way that's Islamically acceptable. So I think it's a really great conversation to have. And also, you know, I feel like when it comes to this conversation, we don't want to fall into the trap of guys having this conversation. You know, I've seen, for example, podcasts of a bunch of guys sitting down and having a conversation about female hijab. But really and truly, you need to have Muslim women having that conversation. You know, I think that's very important personally anyway. So inshallah, we will be discussing that throughout this episode, and we will be discussing also men's hijab as well as a few other topics. But before we begin, just to move an intro into yourself, if you can, for anyone who might not have heard your story or who follows you on Instagram or who sees your work, you know, just give us a bit of a background of yourself if you can.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll be as general as possible. I started this account around 2 years ago in the summer of 2018. And my goal was not for it to actually be something. It kind of happened by accident. I just posted a few photos and they were with a professional photographer. And I remember seeing like an immense, amount of support from the community, my friends, family. And then people started to ask me like, what are you wearing? Where'd you get that from? How much was it for? And then I started to get like recognized by like modest brands, you know, hijab brands and things like that. And I remember like, you know, being so excited, like this is awesome. I'm getting free hijabs. I didn't even think this could become a source of income for me. And I mean, that's kind of how it started 2 years ago, and it evolved into what it is today.
I think it's amazing because usually when we think of Instagram, like, you know, we kind of forget that people make a living, you know, solely off Instagram, you know. So like, how does it work if anyone wants to become like an influencer on Instagram and use their following to basically make a living? What advice would you give to them, you know, from whatever walk of life they may be on?
Absolutely. It's a very like time-consuming, long process to actually start making like a real income to where like it's enough to pay your bills, you know,
Yeah.
and it's significant enough to where you can also save money and build something from that. It takes time. I think the most important thing for anybody that wants to be like, I don't like to say the word influencer, even though like I am an influencer and I believe that I am, but like when you're starting off with something, your goal shouldn't be like, I want to influence. Your goal should be like, I really love what I'm doing and I want to showcase that to people and I want to work on it daily and I'm going to do whatever it takes for it to become something, and then it will naturally grow. If you're after followers, comments and likes and making money more specifically, like it's going to be harder for you to like be focused and actually do things the right way. So it's actually not hard. Just love what you do and, you know, show up every day, create content that you need to do, and eventually you'll be recognized by not only like smaller brands, but larger brands, like more premium brands and things like that. So it is possible.
I find that so interesting. Sorry, Ali, go ahead.
What was it?
You think it's easier for women than it is for men?
Good question. No, I don't think it's easier for a man or woman. I think it's just people, when somebody looks at your page in general, whatever you're doing, and they see like there's time and effort and quality content being pushed out, then people will like push that follow. You have to give them a reason, and you have to kind of like use their emotion and drive their emotion to kind of, you know, follow you, like you, comment, and even engage with you and send you a personal direct message. So it's not any different for a man than it is for a woman. No.
I think it's so interesting because you talked about how, you know, you don't want to be too focused on, I think money is one thing, but also, you know, for everyone who uses social media to be so focused on likes and comments and shares. And I want to throw this question out to Ali, Hasnain, either of you. How do you kind of maneuver that? Because, you know, these days when you want to quantify someone's success, depending on their field, usually you quantify it based on how much engagement they get on social media. But at the same time, like Zahraa said, you want to also, which is something I've learned as well over the years, enjoy what you're doing and post for the sake of, you know, the fact that you want to share something as opposed to you want it to do well on Instagram or Facebook. So how do you kind of find that balance? Hasnain, let me ask you.
It's a really good question. I think when it comes to me, it's less about the likes and the influence. Like I use Instagram simply to just say like, hey, I did a film. Here it is. I think I focus more on other aspects of my career, like film festivals is where I actually care about. But Instagram to me is I treat it as, you know, fun and you know, I just post what I like and I connect with people that like the same thing that I like. And that's my audience, you know. I think it also comes down to who your audience is. So totally forgot what the heck your question was. But that's gonna be my answer.
I was saying, okay, then let me ask you this: like, how do you avoid falling into the trap of being like, oh, this picture got 100 likes or this one got 200 likes, and making it basically feel like you've succeeded at something because you have affirmation from people via likes?
So I'll give you an example. I recently just posted a story of a film that I did that just got into the Toronto Muslim Film Festival.
Nice.
Don't really care about who likes it or whatnot. I care about who's messaging me saying congratulations, and I care about who's taking my story and reposting it. Like, listen, this is congratulations to Hasnain for doing this. So that's how I, you know, classify this
real engagement.
Basically, it's basically like, you know, I'm getting DMs from my friends saying congratulations, this is really dope, you know, I'm proud of you, you worked really hard for this. And even that 7 or 8 people that DM me and saying congratulations, or that 2 people, that 3 people that repost your story and like congratulate you that way, to me is more than 2,000 random likes and then move on, you know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because each of us here, just kind of thinking about it, we use our Instagram for various different reasons. So my Instagram basically recently, I've just kind of like made it solely poetry. Zahraa, you know, you do your thing with modest fashion. Hasnain, you post films and nice pictures of yourself, which must be nice. Ali, you know, you post like Imam Ali quotes left, right, and center. So I want to ask you, Ali, what's your relationship like with Instagram? Because I feel like when I go through your story, I feel like I'm at a mosque or a majlis, just I see quote after quote after hadith after hadith.
Yeah, I feel like I'm overseas in Iraq.
Yeah, and then like, guys, what do you think I'm thinking? And then you have to like, you know, put the question in, the answer in. So what's Instagram to you is my question to you.
For me, the reason I do it is I want to inspire people. I want to remind people of different quotes that they can use in their life on a regular basis. Yeah, and that's what I usually post. Just so there's a voice out there that people can hear or see. Maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe they're stuck in a situation where they don't know how to get out of it. And they read a quote that's inspirational for them, and they say, oh, that's pretty awesome. I'm having that same issue. That'll help me. So I use the post mostly for that. Every now and then I'll post my own pictures, which I started doing more recently because in the past I hardly had any of my own. And then I'll use my stories to talk about the different events that are happening across the world, especially with the oppression that's going on and the tyranny and bigotry, especially in our country. So it's kind of twofold in that way. One side, it's inspirational with the post, and then with the stories, it's more talking about current everyday events.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the inspirational side of it because, you know, I think what's happening with social media is that it becomes a reflection of our, psychologically, based on what I understand, it's a reflection on your deep inner self, right? So there's a whole like psychology to it. And, you know, we have all these conversations about how good social media is for our psyche and mental health. But what you mentioned, which was nice, is that, you know, you have the opportunity to make someone's day better. And it's true, you know, sometimes looking for your stories, Ali, I'll see a quote, you know, that you've posted that I'll be like, hey, you know what, life isn't so bad. It's okay. You know, so you've uplifted my day. Sorry, say that again.
I said life is temporary. Everything is temporary.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a quote that you might need to post today. But it's like, you know, just that brief reminder, you know, and with that brief reminder, you're uplifting someone. So you can really use social media for good. Zahraa, I want to get into your Zahraa the Label. I saw you're launching it soon, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
give us a breakdown of what it is and what you intend to achieve by it.
Yeah. So a couple years ago, when I first started blogging on my Instagram, I remember I started this dropship store where I was dropshipping like fashion clothing for women, not specific to modest fashion. And I remember I was creating, you know, my Instagram page, and I was using inspirational photos to kind of create a pretty theme. And I came across this really beautiful skirt. And I looked at it and I said, I've never seen a hijabi wear a skirt like this, but in a more like modest, you know, way. And I remember wanting to buy the fabric and go to the seamstress and make all of that, but I didn't have enough, you know, money to kind of go about that route because I was living paycheck to paycheck. So I was like, okay, well, maybe one day I could do it. So alhamdulillah, you know, fast forward 2 years where I've saved up enough. I started my own label, my own brand, and it's catered to the modern Muslim woman. And it's a mix of so many different things. It's a mix of, you know, premium quality. It's a mix of, trending styles, trending details, things like that, but adding the modest twist to it, which, you know, as crazy as this might sound, there's like not enough brands out there to kind of deliver this type of thing, even though you do see a lot of amazing brands by, you know, Muslim business owners doing these types of things. I felt like there really wasn't enough, and every brand owner has their own style, and I have my own style that I grew up following that really loves what I wear and what I do and things like that. So I decided to kind of push my creativity to the limit, you know, to the sky, and start creating these types of pieces that, you know, girls will love to wear and feel confident in and feel empowered in, and, you know, really be modest, not like labeled as modest, but like actually be modest pieces that are like really unique and different. So
you mentioned like confidence and empowerment. To what extent do you think, you know, with Muslim women, especially like in America right now, with how and this is going to get a bit deep, so I know we're just talking about modest fashion stuff, but we're here now, let's go there. You know, with America the way it is right now, you know, so much Islamophobia, so much uncertainty, and just generally I feel like with Muslim girls who are growing up, you know, it's almost as if you're growing up in a society where all the celebrities and role models and influencers are telling you to take your, you know, to show your beauty, to show your body, to show your hair, and I feel like, you know, it can be really hard to and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not, like I said, I don't want to mansplain anything, but I feel like the vibe that I get from people that I know is that it can be very hard to find that sense of empowerment when empowerment is being preached as showing, you know, your beauty as opposed to covering it. So to what extent do you feel like the way Muslim women dress in our communities can help, you know, them feel better about themselves and feel more empowered?
Absolutely. And I think like this question is really deep, and there's so many ways I can kind of go about this, but I'm just going to be like really, you know, I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible and use myself as an example. You know, growing up, like you mentioned, there's so many brands out there, there's so many celebrities out there, there's so many influencers out there that are not Muslim or are Muslim and are not really modest, that a lot of girls look up to. And I mean, even in the society that we're in, like you mentioned, there's, I mean, a lot of, you know, body parts showing and things like that. And I think we kind of reached a point to, with a lot of social media platforms evolving, such as TikTok, seeing girls, you know, wear certain things or do certain things or move their body in certain ways. I think a lot of people are coming to the realization that this is actually not female empowerment. And I'd like to give an example of this new song that, you know, you probably heard of, Cardi B. She came up with this really bad song, and it's about female empowerment, and it's actually nothing like that. And, you know, reading the comment section on these platforms makes you realize that, you know, while there is a large following for people believing that this is an empowerment, there actually is another following where people see this as, you know, probably disgusting or, you know, degrading a woman's status and stuff like that. So it kind of goes back to the society. Yeah,
it's actually very interesting. Sorry, just to cut you off, because I was actually reading an article about this yesterday, and the person who was writing the article was basically, you know, drawing out the lyrics and was just saying that this is, you know, some of the most important literature since Shakespeare, and like the way he was going on, it was just so strange. And he was saying that but his point was actually quite interesting. He was saying the reason is because it's a woman owning her sexuality, something which is usually used to enslave women. So, like, how would you respond to that perspective on this? And that is what a lot of, you know, people are saying who are celebrating, you know, the song and the general gist of it, is that it is female empowerment from that sense. I mean, how would you respond to that?
That's a really good question. I mean, honestly, this song kind of goes hand in hand with like the porn industry, and where some women feel like, yeah, I'm empowered. I could do this type of thing. I could show whatever I want. I could do whatever I want. There's no harm in it. I'm making money. And sorry, go ask the question again.
Yeah, sure. No,
I just want to clarify one thing. Are we talking about the same song?
Yeah,
latest one, right?
There's only one song, right?
Are you kidding me? Nicki Minaj, Cardi B have so many songs.
Listen, I'm very clueless when it comes to this subject. I came across a tweet a few weeks ago. That's how I knew about the existence of this song. But, you know, so Hasnain, I'm sure you're more aware of what's happening in culture. You know how clueless I am with it. But just like Zahraa, what I'm asking you is about just general female empowerment, and can a woman, you know, do the opposite of what Islam says, you know, show herself more and act in a certain way, and is that empowerment? Because that is the narrative right now, right? That is what is being preached generally in our society, is that a woman can own her sexuality and essentially be empowered through that means.
Yeah, I mean, again, it kind of goes back to the society and how each girl grows up. But if you're asking more specifically, like the Muslim community and the Islamic community, like how they view it, there's a lot of girls who probably wish that they could do this type of things. And there's a lot of girls who find that disgusting. It just goes back to, like, you know, how you kind of grew up and what you believe in and how, like, important your values are to you at the end of the day. But like for me personally, if you want to ask me if I find that empowering, I absolutely do not find that empowering. I feel like there's so many more amazing ways that a woman could be empowering, you know, like be a leader, you know, be a politician, be a business owner, you know, be an influencer, be a blogger, but like doing these types of things where like you're showcasing your certain body parts and that's somehow female empowerment. That's actually not female empowerment. That's like, you're just like, I mean, at least that's in my eyes. Like, I mean, I feel like you don't have to do these things to be recognized. I feel like it's for clout, and it's just to kind of like, because it's a risk when you're doing this type of thing. And I also read an article similar to kind of what you're talking about, where like Cardi B doing this move was like a big risk, because either you're going to be shamed for it or you're going to be praised for it. And like, I would say 90% of the people praised her for it, because again, this is what society is, and this is what people, or like what the community, or I'm sorry, what the society wants it to be like as accepted. So it just goes back to like how you were raised as a Muslim, and leave everybody else aside. Like, I mean, in general, the Americans, Europeans, whatever, I mean, however they're raised, I mean, their culture is different than how I was. But again, going back to me, I do not find that empowering at all.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you say that they were raised differently, but I think what's so interesting is that, like you said, there was such an outrage from non-Muslims about the whole thing, saying, this is shameful. And even forgetting that, let's say, for example, the latest Netflix scandal, which Hasnain, you can talk about a bit as well, which was a few weeks, if not months back, this film that they released, which was essentially dubbed pedophilia because it was girls basically. Hasnain, maybe you can tell us more about it. I'm not too caught up on the topic, but from what I understand, it was pretty bad.
I don't know much about it myself, but yeah, it was dubbed a bad image. However, I will say this, not that I'm for or against it. I would say as a film, as a filmmaker, you're gonna take that risk, like we just mentioned, right? Of making a film that you think is art to you. I've said this plenty of times in other podcasts that we had, that you're just making a film. From what I read, if you actually read what the actual film was about, I think it was trying to help bring up the topic and like try to prevent it, and like it was trying to cloud itself in the positive light. But as a filmmaker,
so basically it's being told there's an unflinching look at what it means to be a preteen girl.
Basically, yeah. So as a filmmaker, I think it's a big blow to the people behind who just worked really hard on a film, because I know what that is. But at the same time, you have to know, like, going back to the conversation, when I do films, I have to know what is good and what is bad for me, right? And I think that's, there was a lack thereof from the writers to be like, hey, is this something that we can actually push? Like, reading society today, like, hey, what should we do? So that's just what I wanted to comment on it.
I mean, the thing is, so the film is called Cuties, and I remember like just seeing bits of the trailer, and it was essentially just, it just seemed like it was sexualizing these young girls to the extent that I'm just reading here now, that from what I understand, there was even like a call to investigate whether Netflix had violated any laws by distributing child pornography. That's how bad it was. And I think that, when I saw the outrage as well, and this is again my personal opinion, I think it's different when you're so into film and you understand film production and the way like movie studios work. I was like, well, the film is horrible, but I'm not against the actual streaming site, because it's like saying, oh, I'm going to boycott 20th Century Fox because they released this film that I don't like. I mean, there's so many moving parts to a studio and so many avenues that they're involved in, and this is just kind of like one of them. But it does kind of like ask that question, like, are the boundaries being pushed too far? Is something really you want your kids to be watching, or even for us to be watching? Zahraa, what do you think? I mean, do you think that it's more of a responsibility on us as Muslims to, for example, make sure our children are not exposed to this kind of content, or do you think it's a responsibility on everyone as a community collectively to make sure this kind of stuff isn't produced?
Well, I mean, as a parent in my household, my rules are going to be different than Netflix's rules. There's a lot of things that my kids are exposed to when they go to school, when they play outside. I mean, just in general. So it's my job as a parent, first and foremost, to like be very careful of what my kids are watching on TV and things like that. But I do also believe that, they should be held accountable, because there is a limit. Like, that's the thing. Like, nowadays, there's no limit. Like, there's no cap. There's nothing like, hey, you can't do this, because everybody's like, no, I could do whatever I want. I can do any movie that I like, and what are you gonna do about it? And that's the sad part. I mean, go back 10 years, these types of movies didn't exist. And there's also other shows on here where they show some really crazy things, and you're just like, how is this even on Netflix? Like, and they want to normalize it, right? They want people to accept these types of things. And even in kids movies and kids cartoons and things like that on TV, you see these things, and my kids don't get it, but I get it, and I'm like, okay, we're changing this right now, and so I mean, it goes both. It goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I think it's sorry, just to cut you off. I think it's interesting because, even me, like I feel like sometimes I'm enjoying a show that's just, you know, so great on every level, even like inspiring. You know, you find like Islamic lessons in it, and then they just kind of like throw a scene of nudity in there just, you know, for the sake of it. It's like, oh, what was the point ultimately? And it just feels like what it becomes is less of art and less of storytelling and more just this idea of, we want to sell literally women's bodies. That's what we want to sell, women's bodies, so we can sell the show. And that's like the unfortunate reality. Ali, sorry, I cut you off.
I was going to say, what do you think about subscribing to you know, streaming services like that do offer these things?
What do you think? Let me ask you first, because I remember just recently there was I know you tried to sound smart by throwing a question out, but I'm going to throw it back at you.
For real.
He just thought, let me throw out a question, and it looked like I'm getting involved. No, because it's interesting because there was that, I'm sure you guys saw that fatwa recently by one of Spanish representatives that was like, you know, if this is a situation, you have to cancel Netflix. So it is actually a conversation to have. I mean, forget Islamically, but morally wise, I mean, in terms of morality, Ali, what would you do?
I think I'm on the fence with it because you have to have the freedom of speech and the freedom of business, whatever people want to do and whatever the norm is in the society. Because what the norm is today was not the norm 50 years ago. Mm. And because society's evolved and the norm has changed, you have to allow that norm in one way. But on the other hand, how far off track do you get? Because if someone just pushes you, you realize how far you got pushed. But if someone nudges you, and next thing you know, you're 10 feet away from where you started, then you don't realize how much of a vast difference it is from where you started. Yeah. So religiously, I think, you know, there was the nudging, and now it's a push, and we're realizing how far off things are right now. I don't know what Stan is laughing at.
So Stan's basking your wisdom. That's what it is.
Far off base. But society-wise, you know, you sort of have to let society do what it's doing, what the norms are.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of like the question. I think some Muslims, especially on the extreme end, feel like that they can, you know, impose their laws onto others. You know, this is how you have to dress. This is how you have to be. This is how you have to think. And ultimately, we need to accept that we live in a society where, you know, there's people that think, like Zahraa said, different to us, that grew up different to us, right? And it's just about kind of like having that sense of coexistence. And I think for me, like if Netflix were to produce content solely like that, then I would personally cancel it because, you know, that's what I'm paying my money into. But if it's like a part of it, then personally I wouldn't canceling. Moving on, Zahraa, I want to speak. I know you said you hate the word influencer, but I've got like 5 questions here about influencers. So I'm not sure how to rephrase them. But it's interesting because I actually picked it up off one of your posts. I mean, you were speaking about, you know, the influence that Instagrammers can have on people that they follow, right? So to what extent do you think, just starting off this conversation, to what extent do you think that influencers on Instagram influence us as followers of them?
On every level you can think. It's being an influencer, a blogger, whatever you want to call it. And I thought about this today, and I've never thought about it like this before, but think of the influencer as the mama duck, and all of the followers are the baby ducklings. And they look up to the mama duck, and they follow the mama duck in every step that she takes. And it's your responsibility as the mother duck to take care of them, right? And that's probably the best way that I could, you know, phrase it and think about it, because you know, influencers, like, we impact people on so many levels, whether that's spiritual, financial. I mean, I could tell somebody I made something, and like, I remember making one time a dish. The next day I woke up to 12 people making the same dish. Wow. And that just shows you there's so much power that you have that you don't think you have. And it's just food, you know, so can you imagine everything else that you're doing that could be either right or wrong? So we impact people on every level that you could think.
Do you like reflect on this every time before you post, or has posting become just like, you know, because I ask you this because I struggle with this too. Sometimes when I post things, I don't really think about the fact that X amount of people are going to see it, right? Especially when you have such a large following. It's like sometimes, you know, you think to yourself, I mean, you, for example, you got like 37,000 people following you. When you post something, sometimes you don't think that, you know, you're standing on a stage speaking to 37,000 people. You just think like you got something you want to get off your chest and just kind of like share it. So I mean, how much do you think about something before you post it?
I think about everything that I post before I post it. Now, most recently, for the past few months, I've been posting less, just because I want to push valuable content out there. And it's really important for me to push something out there that I know will work. So again, there's so many things that I think about when I want to post something. So number one, is it morally acceptable? Number two, does it clash with any of my values, my virtues, things like that? Because a lot of times, believe it or not, it does. So sometimes either you're not going to post it, you are going to post it. So you have to think about so many things. But if you want to go back to thinking about it from like a faithful perspective, whether it's going to, collide with who you are and your values and the things that you stand by, yeah, there's a lot of times where I do think about these types of things. And it's more often than not, which is why I've kind of posted less, because I realized that posting too often sometimes is not like such a great idea. Sometimes, I mean, this week I posted that one caption you were talking about, which is titled "Influencers Also Get Influenced." And I wanted to talk about this thing because I feel like it's so important and I wanted to shed light on it. But it wasn't something that I thought about, hey, I'm gonna write this post. It's something that I've been thinking about for a very long time, and it has a lot to do with bloggers removing their hijab, bloggers wearing their hijab a certain way, bloggers wearing certain, makeup styles and things like that, and how that's gonna like affect me. So I decided, I'm gonna put this into a post, and I want to talk about it. I want to be raw. I want to be real, and that's like the most important thing at the end of the day, is that like if they're connecting with you and they're relating with you on that level. So yeah, I think about everything before I post, and it's not, hey, I'm gonna post and it is what it is. No, there's a lot of thought that goes into it.
Yeah, and I think also there's a lot of noise that happens when you post a lot. So I don't know if you know this as well. So for example, in Muharram, obviously, I'm posting every day, right? I'm posting a poem every single day. And after Ashura, it's just like I want to, even though there are still like, there are still beneficial posts that I can post, even though I'm not necessarily posting pictures of myself, but rather like, writings. Even then, it's like that barrage of likes and comments that you get, it just becomes like noise. It becomes, it's almost as if you're standing in a crowded room. So when you kind of like switch off and refuse to post, you feel like almost you're on holiday, right? In the middle of nowhere, on a desert island. And I think that's also important as well. Hasnain, what do you think about the power of influencers? Do you feel like, do you feel like it's possible to scroll through Instagram and not get influenced by what you see? Or do you feel like we underestimate the kind of power influencers have?
I think we sometimes underestimate influencers. Again, going back to the word influencer, I actually myself use the word motivator instead of influencer.
Nice.
Because influencers are trying to motivate, right? That's also another little thing that do. So I just call them motivators. I don't know if that's a word you want to use, but yeah, I mean, even I myself get influenced by like my film work and things that I create by other influencers who don't have nothing to do with film, to be honest with you. Ali, why are you laughing?
he's just so happy to see you expressing yourself from your heart.
You just said you called them motivators, and then you switched right back over and started calling them influencers.
Because you guys kept saying influencer, so it's now stuck in my head. Anyways, let me backtrack. So all right, so I will look at a motivators page, and this guy is posting about like I don't know, like motivate yourself so you can afford like a Lamborghini or a house. You see stuff like that. Now, to me, that has nothing to do with what I have to do, but seeing something that he said or seeing something that he or she said or his post gives me an idea, like, okay, like, let me kind of like get my gears going and try to get something out there for myself as well. So I think that you can be motivated from anybody that does basically anything on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or Netflix, whatever.
What about negative influence or negative motivation? And I don't mean like following someone negative. I mean, for example, let's say you're in a certain mood, and then you see a post that kind of like throws you off balance. Does that happen? I mean
that happens to me all the time. When the days I'm sad, I'm on Instagram, everything is sad. The days I'm happy and I'm on Instagram, everything is happy. I don't know why. It's insane.
Maybe it's perspective.
I don't know why that. I know it's not perspective.
I think that's what it is. Because your feed doesn't change based on your mood.
That's true.
Listen, I don't know.
I don't think that's the quality from what I understand. There's no like setting to turn on and off when it comes to that. But yeah.
No, but yeah, I mean, no. I mean, if I'm sad or happy, if I'm feeling an emotion, there's usually I kind of stay away from that negative aspect. You know, I just scroll past to it.
I think that is definitely an important conversation to have. Zahraa, moving back to what you were speaking about, you mentioned briefly about other bloggers and other hijabi influencers, motivators, Hasnain, that are motivating people that follow them. When it comes to female Muslim youth who are growing up, what influence do you think that hijabi influences have on them? Do you think it's a negative or a positive? Because I know that on a basic level, you know, I remember when it kind of first kicked off, you know, you had like hijabi tutorials and ways to dress and stuff like that. But now it's become like a whole movement, you know, it's become like a whole industry almost, you know, and in that industry you have celebrities, Muslim celebrities who, like you said, have taken off their hijabs and are talking about, you know, why they decided to take off their hijab, which is their own personal decision, but they're also doing it in front of a massive audience of people who follow them and, you know, like you said, look up to them and see them as role models and have grown up with them. So like, how do you balance the negatives and positives? Do you think it's a positive industry? I mean, or do you think that I'm overthinking it?
Yeah, no, I think in any industry in general, you're always going to have the negative sides and the positive sides, but what's negative to you might not necessarily be negative to somebody else, right? So it's all about that person's upbringing, and I always like to bring that up because this is like significant. And every follower that I've had a conversation with, sometimes they'll share a little bit about their background and how I influenced them and how
So just to cut off. So do you have conversations with your followers, or I mean?
I do.
Nice. As in, anyone can DM you and you have like a full-on conversation with them, or how does it work?
Yeah, so I try my best, like, you know, once a week, if I, like, I mean, in my free time. I know I've been really busy recently, but like in my upbringing to where I was now, and I had more free time. Yeah, if anybody like DM me on anything, they needed like, you know, help on anything or had a certain question, I like to build that connection with them and build that bond with them. Like I have people following me from day one, and like you know, message like, you know, like you're still doing what you were doing 2 years ago. Like that's amazing. You didn't change yourself. Blah blah blah. And I think like that's important because why I built that connection with them, and I didn't like just treat them like somebody else and just hit like the delete button. No, I actually give them that time and respond to them when I have it, which is, you know, I try to kind of go on like once a week, check my requests, because not everybody like will message me something or a question. Sometimes it's like random stuff. I don't respond to those. But like if somebody has like a genuine question and needs help, especially if it's like faith related, I'm just like, okay, priority, like right there, and I'll like respond to them and have a conversation with them.
Because it's your chance to help. It's your chance to help someone, right? And sometimes you can forget that when it's behind the screen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, like I have to be me. You know, I like to stay the same person on social media. And like in general, like if you meet me in general, I'm hoping I'm the same person. I'm hoping like I'm not any different than who I am. And I kind of like try to be that person with my followers and not be like this, you know, like, oh, I'm better than you and I have this much followers, blah, blah, blah. No, I try to be like as humble as I can be and like respond to everybody as best as I can. So.
Sorry, I switched up the question. So positives and negatives of this industry.
Yeah, positives and negatives. Again, it goes back to how you like, you know, you were raised and the values that you are, you know, you're holding dear to heart and things like that. And again, what's positive to you might not necessarily be like positive to somebody else. What I view as like negative, I talk about. I'm not shy to talk about these things. And what I view as positive, I'm also not shy to talk about, and I promote these things. I don't necessarily like bash people or bash, you know, somebody for doing a certain thing. But what I try to do is influence in a way by saying like, hey, if you're not being influenced appropriately by somebody, if that person's values don't align with yours, if that person's going to impact you to do something that you don't want to do, unfollow and try to find somebody that's going to help you become like a better person or help you stay true to yourself. Because at the end of the day, we are influencing to people to like either change and become better people or change to become, I don't want to say worse people, but somebody that they're not.
That's interesting.
And I don't want to create that false idea or false like image of myself. I always try to be as real as possible. So.
Ali, what do you think about being one person in real life, one person on Instagram? Because the thing is, it's interesting because I feel like I have this issue because I get people coming up to me who might follow me on Instagram, and I think with me it's a bit different because I don't kind of share myself on Instagram. I just share a part of me. But I think people forget that when they meet you in person, you're not just a part of yourself. You are a whole person, right? So, for example, Hasnain, people meet you, they think, they just think about Hasnain, the actor, I'm sure they think a lot of other things as well. They think you're Hasnain, the actor, and like there's this whole, other side of you. There's this whole being that is Hasnain Ali that people, don't know and don't see on Instagram. And I feel like it's so hard to maintain that. I think being real is one thing, Zahra. I think I agree with that, but at the same time, like Instagram can only ever like show a glimpse of you, right? It can't show the whole of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times, and just recently, I just like pushed the YouTube video out there that was like a little bit personal, but I felt like I needed to share it. But absolutely, what you're saying is true. What I mean by like being real is like I'm not two different people. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I'm not a different person than what I am on social media. But yeah, absolutely, you have to limit the amount of exposure that people can know about you, right? So I choose what I push. I choose what I share with people. And that's only because I know that that's the most I can share. And they don't need to know more than that. But yeah, but what I was trying to say is like, I'm the same person if you met me on both social media and in real life. I'm the same person. Yeah.
Ali, what do you think about the subject? Because, as someone who deals, it sounds funny, but, because you work in marketing, you're always kind of like trying to sell an idea, let's say, or sell a concept. And I feel like with social media, you're selling a part of yourself, whether we like it or not, right? We're all selling a part of ourselves, whether it be sharing it or talking about what we want to talk about. We're specifically choosing to share a specific part of ourselves. So do you think that's like healthy for us, Ali, or do you think like indulging so much in that, indulging so much in sharing a specific part of yourself, do you think that's healthy for us as human beings, as Muslims?
I think it's just like, if it's not just online, you're going, before COVID, before we were all quarantined, when you go to work, you show one part of yourself. When you're hanging out with your friends, you show another part of yourself. When you're with family, you show another part. It's just human nature. So just like that, when you're on Instagram, you're showing the part that you really want to show. It doesn't mean that there aren't other parts to you.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. Oh, sorry. Okay, so I want to move on to, as we wind up. Sorry, Ali.
What happened?
I said, what? You don't like my answer? You're like, oh, that's interesting. I want to move on.
No, I got distracted. Sorry. Very good answer, Ali. Thank you so much.
Do you mind if I jump in real quick, because I do want to ask this one question before you wrap up and do what you want. I want to go back to the beginning of this conversation when we went back to speaking about your label and how you launched that business. And I'm a very creative person, and one question I've been pondering this whole time was, can you walk me through like your creative process of how you go about making something, whether it's like a skirt or a shirt? Like, do you have like Pinterest boards? Because I do. I'll be honest with you. I use Pinterest all the time. Like, do you actually draw things out? Like I just want to like get into your head, like the creative process. Like, all right, this is kind of where I start, and this is kind of where I finish, and then from here is kind of where my final product is. If you don't mind me asking.
No, I mean, totally fine. So because I just started doing this, I haven't been doing this for a long time. I just started. My first design just finished and it completed. So it's a mix of everything. It's not just one thing. So I started off sketching. Mind you, I'm not a fashion designer. I don't know how to sketch. If you see my first drawing, you'll crack up. It's so funny. But I wanted to kind of show the actual dressmaker an idea of what I wanted. And I realized that this is probably not a good idea because I'm not a fashion designer and I don't know how to sketch out a drawing. So I went onto my Pinterest boards that I had already saved from like all these years. And I said, you know what? I want this sleeve. I want this cuff. I want this A-line skirt. I want this. And I want you to fuse them all together. And I want you to make this piece. So you'll start off by making your first sample. And the first sample was a fail. It was nothing like I expected it to be. So I realized, I said, okay, when I got the product, I'm like, okay, this part looks good. I want to change it. I want to change the fabric. I want to do this. I want to do that. And then we did our second sample, and that was perfect. It just needed a little touch, and I did the third. And my third is perfect. It's exactly what I imagined, and I brought it to life. So yeah, it's a mixture of everything. I actually pay somebody to draw my idea out.
Got it. Okay.
Because I realize that's a crucial part of my business, because I need to let them see what I'm thinking. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is through like somebody that knows how to actually draw it out. And sometimes, you know, that's costly, but like it's worth it in the beginning. But down the line, it's not just that. It's sometimes it could be like, you know, this is a mid dress, like a long sleeve midi dress. I want you to make it into a maxi. So sometimes it's like that simple or that easy. So it's like a mixture of everything. I'm learning. So sorry if my answer is not.
I just want to know like how you go about it.
It's a mix of everything.
I find that process so interesting, because I'm not a fashion designer by any means, but you know, like it does interest me. Like we had Nabil Zaidi on I think 2 episodes ago, and he's a fashion designer based in New Jersey. He has his fashion label, Profound Aesthetic, and like I remember me, you, Hasnain, you were there too, speaking about, you know, artists like Jerry Lorenzo and even like Kanye West, and the kind of like the creativity they put into these clothes is just fascinating. You know, the way they produce designs and the way their character and what they believe comes out and what they design is insane. Like, for example, so Jerry Lorenzo, very religious, you know, God-fearing Christian fellow who talks about, you know, how he puts fear of God in everything that he designs. You know, every piece of clothing that he designs is essentially fear of God. You know, Kanye West talks about how he designs clothes based on verses of the Bible and how the Bible tells you to dress, which I think is just so interesting. So Zahraa, how do you find your process evolving when it comes to designing, and how do you like think of ideas? Is it like, for example, you just think about what you'd want to wear, or you see something on the street, or you know, how does that process work? The actual thinking of what to create.
Yeah, so inspiration comes from like all sorts of different angles, right? So like before COVID, you know, I used to go to the mall, and you know, there's like a high-end mall right where I live, and I'd go there sometimes just to kind of see like what's trending. And there's a lot of modest pieces, because like elegance and like being conservative is like, it's like classy, right? So like if you go shop Gucci, whatever, you don't find these revealing pieces, you find covered up pieces, you find long dresses, right, and things like that. And some of these things are really expensive. So I'd go there sometimes for inspiration, not thinking that it's inspiration, but just looking at something and like saying, wow, like that's really pretty. Too bad it's $6,000, you know. But I get my inspiration from like all sorts of ways. And that's kind of like, I mean, how it starts. But as far as like going back to your question, like how it, like I started off like with my collection pieces, I don't really have like a collection, because in order to have like a collection, you need to have like a theme, and you need to have prints, and you need to have, you know, different tones and things like that you're going to work with. From my first collection, I didn't realize that it's kind of supposed to be like that. I just wanted to create some pieces that are like I've been dying to create, and I did them. And they're only 4 pieces. They're not like, it's not like a vast collection drop. But inshallah, for my next collection that I'm going to be pursuing and creating, it's actually going to be more focused. And I did my research. So like you need to have tones and prints, and you need to study like other brands. There's so many things that like I'm kind of still learning and researching, because I'm not a fashion designer, and nobody will actually give you like spoon feed you and tell you like, hey, this is what you're supposed to do, because these are like secrets that businesses will not tell you.
Wow.
And that you kind of have to figure out on your own, because I do have a lot of friends that are like business owners, and because I am an influencer, I worked with tons of brands before, modest brands, catering to Muslim women, but I can't go to this brand saying, hey, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? How'd you do this? So I kind of have to look at it from an end product, you know, like look at the end product and work my way back to step number 1. And that's kind of what I'm doing now. And it's gotten me like real far. And it's just shifting my perspective and thinking things from a different way.
Yeah, well, I honestly find that really inspiring. I think just hearing about the creative process and you know, and how you can just go from, you know, an idea to literally something that you can wear. It sounds so simple, but I just think, you know, that kind of creative process really fascinates me, and you know, it's definitely something I want to learn more about as well. So just winding down, I did want to get into what I think is an important topic, which is male hijab. And I think that, Hasnain rolling his eyes there. Male hijab, I think that, usually when as I mentioned in the beginning, we speak about hijab, especially like in our communities, religious leaders, community leaders. Usually when we speak about hijab, there is this issue that it's often men speaking down to women. I feel like that personally, based on what I've seen. And then there is a conversation around, to what extent can men have this conversation about how women should dress? Obviously there is Islamically, what is mandated, but also like just generally, in terms of having conversations with women about what they should be wearing, what they can't be wearing. I feel like we're falling into a trap of, men almost talking down to women, which I don't think is right. So just starting off this conversation, Zahraa, do you think that male hijab is something that is under discussed, like not spoken about at all in comparison? Do you think it's something we need to talk more about?
Good question. And I actually didn't think about that till today when you guys sent it over. And yeah, I've never heard anybody discuss, male hijab. I know, like, you see people writing comments like lower your gaze, like that's how a man should be, like that's his hijab, is to lower his gaze and not work, blah blah blah, and all of that stuff. But I think that's just because, like, in general, men's clothing is more conservative. It's more modest than a woman, right? Mm-hmm. You don't see men wearing crop tops and mini skirts and, all of these revealing clothing. I mean, or like when you're at the beach, like he's wearing shorts. Some people wear underwear, like the underwear style. But you understand what I'm saying, is that men's clothing in general is more modest naturally. Yeah. So I feel like maybe that's why it's not really like talked about. I don't know if that makes sense.
I mean, I think when I speak about hijab, I don't just mean like physical hijab. Obviously, there is what you wear. And, I think that sometimes men can forget that, certain clothes are too tight or even like too revealing in certain parts as well, right? That does happen as well. But aside from that, you have like a social hijab, in terms of how you interact with others, how you present yourself online. I think all these are very important topics as well. I think that when I talk about men's hijab, I don't just specifically mean what you're wearing, but also how men act, like you said, lowering your gaze, but also knowing how to speak to women, knowing how to deal with women, knowing how to present yourself generally in society. Ali, what's your thoughts on this subject?
I think outside of just lowering your gaze and outside of just the physical side, there's also the side of how you communicate, what you say, what you don't say when you're speaking to the people of opposite gender or even with the same gender. So I think there's a number of things that go into it. Typically, when you hear hijab, it automatically goes to a woman wearing a covering over her head. But in reality, it's a lot more vast than just that. I think it should be done on both ends.
Do you think there's an issue of men speaking down to women about hijab?
Yeah.
And how do we thank you.
100%. I agree.
How do we? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I asked you this question, because I remember a few years ago, I was listening to a lecture in one of our communities, and the sheikh kind of got up and he delivered this hadith. And this hadith, there is like a debate about whether or not it's authentic. But I'll just say the hadith and then basically say the context of it. The hadith is Fatima, daughter of the Prophet. She says, the best thing for a woman is that no man sees her and she never sees a man. That's the hadith. Now, the interpretation of that hadith, based on what I understand, is that that's not what should be implemented on society, but rather this is the best position that a woman can find herself in. So again, the authenticity of that hadith is debated, whatever. But my point is that he said this hadith on the Mambar while giving a lecture to the community about female hijab. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, right now, we're in a position, Zahraa, I'm sure you'll know, where so many Muslim women want to run away from hijab. They want to run away from modesty, right? And the worst way to try and bring them in is to have a man say a hadith like that on the pulpit to the community. Not, whether the hadith is authentic or not is not my point. The point is, understand your crowd, understand who you're addressing, understand what you can and can't say, or rather think about your goal and think about what the best way is to reach that goal. I think that's my point. So when I speak about men talking down to women, I mean in situations like that, like understand, the vibe of things. Right now, like I said, in specifically, I remember in that situation, I was thinking like right now there's so many influences encouraging women to take off their hijab, and I feel like if you want to bring women in, you need sisters themselves to be speaking to them and like preaching to them in the right ways. Hasnain, what do you think about this topic? Do you think I'm right? Do you disagree with me? What's your controversial opinion?
Of course, I agree with you. I don't think that males should push down on this like you should wear hijab. I think that comes down to a female and her decision alone. I don't like I would not tell a female companion or a friend or like, hey, you should wear hijab or you shouldn't wear hijab. That's to them, and keep it to themselves. That's their decision, and I have no right to say anything about it. That's just my opinion on it. In regards to influencers telling women to like not wear hijab, I think that's in my honest opinion, that you shouldn't influence somebody to do something like that. I think that's a personal opinion. I think that's a personal choice for an individual. Yeah, like if I took off my hijab, right? That's to me. I'm not gonna go and be, I took it off, now you take it off. Like I took it off because here are my reasons.
But keep in mind that those influencers aren't telling people to take off their hijab. They're just taking it off themselves, and then they're explaining why they took it off.
Yeah, but if you're a motivator and you're telling your crowd that you took off a hijab, isn't that indirectly saying something? Like you know what I mean? You see where I'm getting with that? Because you are a motivator, you are an influencer. People listen to you, and people understand you, and people watch you, and they have you on push notification whenever you post something, they get it, right? So if you don't even have to say something, but it's like you indirectly saying something. Does that make sense?
Through action. I mean, everything that an influencer does on her platform is through action, right? Like what we wear, what we eat, what we do, if we wear hijab or not, if we take it off, if I change my style a bit, all of that is speaking to my audience. So everything I do, I'm speaking to them indirectly. And sometimes, a picture speaks 1,000 words, right? Or I think that's how it is. But a picture says a lot, right? So somebody drops the bomb, like, hey, I took off hijab. I mean, that's going to get a lot of bang, and that's going to speak a lot to people. So it's like an indirect message, no doubt.
How do you think that
it's difficult?
How do you think that? Sorry, Ali, go ahead.
If there's a motivator, that's
thank you.
For example, smoking a cigar, or smoking weed, or having a drink on their feed, they're not directly saying, hey, it's okay to do this, or you should do this. But people that look up to them, they're like, okay, this person's doing it, must be okay.
Yeah. I think that is the kind of like danger of social media and just celebrity culture in general. And leading on from that, Zahraa, as we close, let me ask you, how do you think that female influencers like yourself can instill a love of hijab? Motivators can motivate young Muslim girls to love hijab. I don't just mean wear hijab, because wearing hijab, I feel like especially in the community that I'm in, so many girls just kind of grow up wearing hijab because it's their culture, right? And I think that it's one thing to wear it, but it's another thing to love wearing it and be proud of wearing it. So what do you think the best way is to instill the love of wearing hijab in Muslim girls growing up?
That's a really good question. And I feel like, at least for my platform more specifically, the way that I do it is, I talk about so many things on my platform. I'm not just like a fashion, lifestyle, beauty type of influencer. I talk about many things. And a lot of times, from time to time, I'll share, how we should be with our parents, with our family, with our elders.
Nice.
Pass on like do something like a good deed today, open a door for somebody. I don't know, just these types of things that kind of push people to do, to like, I guess, put that light bulb on, like, hey, I should do this today. And what I do and what I talk about and the things I share on my stories is always like a reminder, right? Because sometimes it's not even like me physically going on there and talking about it. Sometimes it's just me posting a photo, or me talking about being a mom, or me talking about the struggles of hijab, which does exist. And, I do have this conversation often with a lot of my my little ducklings or my little followers. And the best way that I can do it is by wearing hijab the right way. And I grew up in a religious household, and I know that my values are very, they're very different than other people's values. And if I can get a few girls to kind of follow my path and do wear hijab kind of like how I wear it, because like when I wear hijab, I'm very careful about my neck showing and about my ears showing and earrings and all of that stuff. Like I'm very careful about these types of things. So that's kind of how my business started, right? So my business started, I started selling hijab neck covers because I wanted girls to wear hijab the right way. Hey, wear hijab. You want to wear like, you know, because the hijab style that came out was like a loose hijab. There was no pin. So here's a pin that I used. And all the girls were wearing it like this. Right now I have my neck cover on, but you can't see my neck. So all the girls, they would just throw it to the side. But what's happening when you're moving? All of this is showing. And I realized, like, man, that's a problem. I love that style. It's really pretty. It suits my face. I need a solution. So I designed my own hijab neck cover. And this is, you know, it's going to be on my site. And I want girls to be influenced to wear their hijab the right way and to cover up and not compromise wearing trending styles. And not have to be worried like when they're out, like their neck showing or their hair showing or their ears showing, or if a scarf is see-through, because they are, as you can see. So that's kind of how I could do it, is by motivating these girls to wear hijab a certain way and sticking to that on a daily basis. Like I don't leave my house without my hijab neck cover. This is something that's a part of me, and it's a problem solver for a lot of girls. So that's kind of how I do it. I don't really like think about it too much, just because it identifies me and it is who I am, and I talk about it naturally. I don't want to like force it on anybody. So I just show people like, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, and if you have a problem with the same problems I am having, well then here's a solution. And that's kind of like how I do it. So
that's beautiful. As a final question, what does hijab mean to you? It's a very cliche question, but I'm hoping to get a good answer.
It's not like a question. What does hijab mean to you? I mean, I've been wearing hijab since I've been like, second, third grade. So hijab is just, I mean, again, it's my identity. It's who I identify as. I'm a hijabi. I'm a Muslim woman. I'm Shia. I mean, it's just part of who I am at the end of the day. But hijab is everything. Hijab is what I look at. Hijab is what I watch. Hijab is how I am with my family. Hijab is how I am with people. Hijab is how I think. I mean, hijab is everything, right? It's not necessarily just like a head covering. And that's kind of what makes a person a person. So coming from all different angles, it's not just like what I wear on my head. It's so many different things, and that I don't want to get into right now because it's going to get too detailed. But hijab is a little bit of everything.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much, Zahraa. I really appreciate you coming on. We definitely learned a lot, and hopefully we'll have a conversation again. Best of luck to your business, and inshallah, if anyone does not follow you and wants to reach out to you, where's the best place to reach you, both you and your label?
Awesome. So my Instagram is Zahraa_H Berro, and my brand page is Zahraa the Label, www.zahraaTheLabel.com. It's really simple. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Zahraa, Hasnain, Ali. See you guys soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Ali. Bye. Salam.
And that was a very interesting and insightful discussion with Zahraa Berro on modest fashion and hijab. I hope it left you enlightened, and I hope you learned a thing or two. I certainly did, and we do pray and wish her all the best. Please do not forget to subscribe to us on all platforms. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, Anchor, and YouTube. We have some fantastic episodes coming up with some really fascinating guests tackling some really interesting topics. So please do stick around. Thank you for joining us once again here over at 786 Boulevard.